I want to know what's the strangest thing you have in your house.
Here, hold on a sec. So this is actually something that my wife desperately felt she needed, and I absolutely agree. And it's a box of teeth.
This is Box of Teeth, chewing over the stories behind the books, with our guest, Nickolas Butler.
So hello, Nick Butler. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hi. Thanks for joining us on Box of Teeth. Where are you talking to us from today?
Yeah, my family and I live out in the country south of Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Nice. So you've got a new book coming out. I've got proof of it here, so advanced copy, Godspeed, which I obviously read as soon as it came in. I actually wrenched it out of my colleagues' hands. So I've read it, a few of my colleagues read it and loved it. It's out in the UK on the 29th of July in hardback. And actually the first question I wanted to ask you about the book was to do with setting. Your previous work's been set where you are now, so Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, and this one is a departure from that. So we find ourselves in Wyoming with a little foothold in California as well. Was that a kind of wrench for you to do that, or was that quite liberating?
I think it was liberating. I've always been proud of writing about rural Wisconsin. I've always described it as like the central gravity of my writing. But, it can also feel like a trap if it's the only thing that you ever write about. And for purposes of this story, I just felt like Jackson Hole and the extreme wealth that's there and the extreme landscape, it seemed like a better place to set this book.
Did you have any sort of fantasy setting that you would like to see your characters roam in one day, if it made sense for you for the story?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, I tell you, I've been fortunate to be translated into French, and I visited my translator at her small rural French village, and I had a wonderful idea to set a book there. But that would require me, I think, to live in France for a little while. There's worse places.
There's worse plans. There's worse places. Could you tell the listeners a little bit about True Triangle construction and what that is, and who these three men are that are so central to this book?
I would say there's four main characters in the book, but three of the main characters are the partners of True Triangle Construction: Cole, Bart, Teddy. They're like childhood friends, and they start a construction company, and then they sort of unwittingly become the head contractors on a once-in-a-lifetime sort of architectural building project. And they're very blue-collar guys. They're each a little different. One's a family man, one is basically a drug addict, and the other one's kind of a rising figure in the local business community.
I was wondering how difficult it was to build up this kind of solid base and solid friendship between these men, and then kind of pull the thread on it and just unravel. Was that the fun part?
If you've read my other stuff before, you kind of know that I'm always interested in friendship. It tends to be male friendship, but it's always friendship in some capacity. And I guess I've always been interested in that particular human dynamic, because other relationships that we have are more easily explained. A husband and wife could be together because of physical attraction or sex. They could be together for money. They could be together for their children. They could be together for stability. We choose business partners because we want to succeed in business, but friendship is something that's quite apart from those things. It ultimately just comes down to, like, who do you like to have fun with, or who do you like to have fellowship with, or who do you trust? And so I'm always interested in exploring that. And a friend of mine from grad school said one thing that she didn't particularly care for in my writing was that she knew that things were always going to fall apart. But I think that's kind of the universal condition. I mean, that's like our natural condition. Things do fall apart. I came across some quote from the old Tom Cruise movie Cocktail, where he says something to the Cocktail. You remember that one?
Classic.
Yeah,
Didn't
oh,
see
good.
that one
I'm glad,
coming.
yeah.
Didn't see that one coming, but yes.
There's some quote in that movie where he says something to the effect of, all things end badly, otherwise they wouldn't end, which is somehow kind of profound for the movie Cocktail.
I want to talk a little bit about this house that's so central as well. It's almost like the fifth main character. This house that they take on and they start to build. Can you describe that a little bit to our listeners, what this house is, what it looks like?
So first off, imagine that you're in a mountainous American Western landscape. You're driving up a road deeper and deeper into the mountains, and alongside the right-hand side of the road, there's a river that's pretty much always there. And as you rise deeper and deeper into the mountains, the mountains rise up and cliffs are rising up, and you get to the end of the road, there's a small bridge, you cross a river, and in front of you, you see that there's some hot springs pressed right up against the mountain, and there is a house, or the ground level floor of which would be like a tastefully done drive-in garage. And then there's 2 layers of the house that rise up from there. And one of those layers would kind of cantilever out over the hot springs. And the 3rd floor of the house would cantilever in a slightly different direction. Mm-hmm. It would be a lot of huge windows, tastefully done stonework, and modern angles of the house. In the book, I think it's described as like a 3-layer cake, slightly askew.
Does this place exist?
The end of the road and the hot springs exist. My family and I took a family trip a number of years ago to Jackson Hole. For 3 days, we camped in a national forest outside of Jackson, where we could pitch a tent, and then every day we could walk about a half mile up this road to a hot springs, where there was like a 1960s era log cabin at the end of the road, right by the hot springs, where they like took your daily fee, and there was a small locker room and stuff like that. And I just thought, what if somebody with too much money could somehow buy this property? Like, what would they do with it, and how would this structure change? And that's what I imagined. But as far as I know, there's no house like that I've ever visited.
Not yet. There might be after this book.
That's right.
I thought there would at least be some place where you had this kind of like emotional response that was similar to the one in the book, where you felt a sense of sort of belonging and like promise, really, when you were at the spot, which I feel like the builder, the commissioner of this house, Gretchen, she really feels both of these things, belonging and promise for the future, whatever that may hold. So sort of staying on the topic of the house, I remember you did an interview and you said that you find comfort in beauty, and I just wondered how important aesthetics are for you, and would you see yourself falling for this same trap that Gretchen did of building something that was outwardly so perfect but essentially hollow inside?
We only have 15 minutes for all this stuff. That's a pretty important question, I think. Well, I mean, look, when my family and I moved back to our hometown of Eau Claire, where I'm at, we bought a piece of property and we commenced building a house. The house to me is beautiful, and it's set in a beautiful place. And I'm not a millionaire, but it cost me and my wife a lot of money. And when we were done building the house, I had feelings like, why did I do this? And not that it's not like a beautiful place to live. It's where I'm at right now, and the sunlight is amazing, and I get to look at my neighbor's buffalo every day. But you know, I never considered the size of my neighbor's houses when I built my house.
Sure.
I never considered, like, was there an architectural style of my neighbor's houses and versus what I bought. I never considered, well, maybe really what I should do is move into my childhood neighborhood, which is very middle class, post World War II, boring ranch houses. I just did this thing and then, you know, started asking the questions really only afterwards. But then one of the amazing things about my job as a writer is I get to imagine, like, well, I'm not a wealthy guy. But like, what if I had way too much money? What would I do?
Yeah.
You know?
So now we get to the show and tell bit of Box of Teeth. What is the weirdest thing that you've got kicking around the house?
We have a couple small kids, and our house is like, you know, it's not like Gretchen's house because it's like full of dirty dishes and kid clothes and stuff like that. But we have a bowling pin. I don't know why that's there.
A bowling pin, cool. Okay, yeah.
That's a buffalo skull.
So the buffalo skull, is that from your neighbor's herd of buffalo? I feel like the buffalo is the most interesting thing. It's not necessarily inside your house, but it's right outside. That's really special.
Yeah, I think it's special too. When we first came to the property and like we got out of the car and I glanced across the fence line and I was like, holy shit, there's a herd of buffalo like right there. I said to my wife, I was like, I think this is the place. Like, yeah. So anyway, the buffalo skull was what used to live next door to us, and all the red meat that my family eats is buffalo. So
it's a cycle. It's a nice cycle. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about music as well, because I saw that you're at the very start of your book, you start with a quote by the XX. So band. So were you listening to them whilst you were writing before? How did that quote get in there?
Well, I put myself on a pretty tight writing deadline to try to emulate what the guys were doing. You know, I think I wrote all the book in 4 or 5 months, which is fast for me. And I tried to be in the same mental state as somebody who was using meth. I found certain ways of doing that. I found certain songs that I would listen to that could put me into a frame of sort of a frenzied, focused state of mind. Mm-hmm. One of those songs was that XX song. Mm-hmm. It's got a really driving bass in the background and kind of spooky singing for my taste, but the lyrics are fantastically spot on. You've got the faith that I can bring paradise. Talks about crystallizing over and over. The other song that I was listening to a lot was Radiohead's Reckoner, which seems to be about like reckoning that. Well, I mean, reckoner here being a calculator, I think, within the context of the song, but also like time and how we reckon our time and the quality of our time. And another song that is just kind of driving and hypnotic, and but I probably listened to the XX like I couldn't say thousands of times in that 6-month period.
Do you listen to songs on repeat when you're writing?
I do. Yeah. I just wear a song out, just wear it out. Yeah. But I listen to all different kinds of music, and it's always been important to me that a reader, you know, reading a book should be a sensual experience. And by that, I mean, as a writer, I hope to engage somebody's senses. And so music is part of that. I want them to, if there's music playing in a scene in the book, I want them to know what that is, what that music is, you know?
Yeah. To wrap things up, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Chin chin-daroo, run run run, kangaroo. Oh, chin chin-daroo, run run run, kangaroo. Oh, chin chin-daroo.